Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the country and where you are in the world, even. And in fact, actually, all four of us are in different parts of the world today, just to confuse everybody, except Robert and Stephen, who are in the same place, not actually physically in the same place, but they're in the place that we will now refer to as the cauldron. I understand it is super hot in England right now. Is that right, Stephen?
Baking here today. Yeah, it's 36 degrees and in UK money anyway, and we don't do aircon in the UK, so it's I changed my shirt just beforehand so it wasn't stuck to me, but it's getting that way already again.
Yeah, so us Americans refer to that as about 96 Fahrenheit, which it depends on what part of the United States you live in, but to be honest, we don't think of that as being particularly hot at all. So there you go. But yeah, we have air conditioning everywhere, so that's the same part of it. I can't imagine. And the people are playing football. The World Cup is actually being played in Dallas, where I live, and it's all kicking off, and people are flaking out from sunstroke already. So Stephen and Robert, hello to you both in the UK. Dirk, who I was just going to introduce, has disappeared temporarily. So I should say 2 out of 4 of us are having internet problems. So if you see us freeze like that, it's not some special game where we get points for not moving. It probably means just the internet's working. Dirk Beerbon is with us. Hi, Dirk. Oh, Dirk says he can't hear anything again. Okay, he might have to disconnect and reconnect. Odd, isn't it? Let me just get him to reconnect again. Talk amongst yourselves. This is the vagaries of the internet. What can I say? In fact, let me see if I can.
Well, Dirk's one of our special guests on this week, and he's joining us from Exasol, which is one of our Yellowfin tech partners. We work very closely with the guys from Exasol, and they do an amazing job in terms of helping speed up the insights and make things faster. And that's a big part of why we've invited Dirk along today to help join the conversation and share some of the pearls of wisdom that he's gathered and can add to the conversation on the Exasol side.
And as you can see, he is flying his Red Bull stunt plane. So if you see him go vertical, he's just going through those little gates. Isn't that right, Dirk? Yeah.
It's definitely not a Red Bull stunt plane. But if you don't get me on the phone, you have either the chance to look into the air or to watch on the sea if I'm sailing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, Dirk. It's fine. We're just going to accept that sometimes computers do weird stuff, but as long as we can hear you, we're good to go. It's fine. Okay, so today's subject is, and by the way, we did mention whilst Dirk wasn't around that Dirk is from Exasol. That's Exasol. I will put a link up later for it. I don't have one set up right now, but I'll set one up whilst we're talking. Let me pull up my wonderful graphics. So today is the Analytics Coffee Club, Brewing Faster Insights, today being the 25th of June, the day we're recording this. You can catch these on the replay. In fact, a lot of people do stream through the bits you don't like and focus on the bits where you think it's interesting. We're here every week at the same time. It's Thursday for us right now in the Northern Hemisphere. Dirk, you're in Germany, aren't you? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, nearby Frankfurt, in the most well-known town. At least it should be, but nobody knows. In my town, the telephone has been invented by a German engineer some 200 years ago or so.
And then Alexander Graham Bell stole the idea and pretended he invented it as well. So.
Well, I don't want to comment on this one, but I can go and go to the house and make a shot of the placard which says, in this particular house, Jan Philipp Reis has invented the telephone. That's why I'm referring to it.
I was in I seem to end up in Frankfurt Airport quite a lot. And I was stuck there overnight one time. And first of all, the security people were very worried because I was the only one in this kind of offshoot of Frankfurt Airport. And the most amazing thing happened. I don't sleep when I travel. And I was sitting on the benches there on my own, and all of a sudden I thought, oh, here comes one of those cleaning people, on these big things that clean the floor, riding on. I'm like, hooray, humans! I feel like I'm not alone. And it came around the corner. It was completely autonomous. It was a massive thing, and nobody was driving it. It had like a kind of two levers that drove a steering wheel that a person would normally drive. It was the first time I've ever seen it, and that was Frankfurt for you. So, and great food in Frankfurt Airport as well. I'm sorry, I'm digressing horribly there, but I'm very fond of Frankfurt. Okay, all right. So let's share the slides. I have today's slides up. 1 second. Always make sure you share the screen that you want to share and not the ones that the internet wants to show up. There you go. I think I'm going to probably hide our names as well. If I can do that, there's a setting here somewhere. Here we go. Settings, show graphics. Maybe I can't do that. Okay, all right. Well, we'll just have to put up with the names. Dirk, you have to sit up a little bit, I think, so that we can see you. Okay, so today we are, and Stephen came up with this pun. Stephen is our pun master. I think.
I think we should probably get a sweepstake for how many coffee puns we get into a session, and you can play along if you're watching.
Inexhaustible supply. So, and Rob.
Each week you can put the number on your bingo card, and you can tick it off and see who gets a line first or something.
Well, Rob is letting the side down because I just saw him drink a glass of water. So I'm sorry, Rob. You can't talk for the next one. There's a penalty.
Just now,
yeah.
But guys, even just because I turned recently 60 does not mean that I want to play bingo.
Well, I should I admit that when I was young, I actually had a job as a bingo caller. I genuinely did. In the UK, it's weird. I got licensed by the UK Gaming Commission and everything. It's used to call the National Bingo Games, £50,000. Anyway, we'll be here forever. But that was one of the jobs I had. It's when I first learned to stand up in front of 800 annoyed people and call out numbers and make someone very rich. So there you go. Okay, so every Thursday we will be here. It's not a lecture. We're going to try and cover as much of a specific topic as we can, but it's a loose agenda. We do have some slides. Rob often does a lot of work on the slides. Stephen then takes the credit for that. But I think we've got there. This is our kind of regular team. So Montana's not with us, I think, today. He's doing something else. So is Maria. She quite often joins as well. Robert and Stephen are both here, as you're aware. They both work for Yellowfin / Idera, the same as myself. I work for Idera, and Dirk works for Exasol, as we said earlier on, and he's joining us as our special guest, honoured guest today as well, Dirk.
Hello.
Okay, so this is the kind of agenda that we've got. We may or may not get through it all. It just depends how we crack through these things. Where should your data be? Speed starts at the source. Smarter dashboards, fewer queries. Who came up with these titles? Rob, is this you with these headings, or was this Stephen?
I think Stephen started it.
No, I think it was. Yeah,
okay.
It's a bit of a mix.
You don't blame it on the AI, Stephen.
Where your data matters. This should be a comment. Q&A and wrap up, and then what's coming next. So that's roughly what we're going to do. So, team, discuss. Where should your data be? Who wants to kick off with that little topic there? Don't look at me because I haven't got the answers.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, I'll kind of kick off. Data comes from lots of different sources, and I think one of the things that we've certainly seen with customers who've been looking to do BI recently is, they've got their transactional databases where their business data exists day to day. There's now a lot of SaaS solutions. I know we've had a chat in the past where we've had DataDo who've been talking about connecting to all these different data sources and being able to bring those into a single place ready to do your analytics on. With data being in lots of different applications, databases, being accessed through REST APIs, your data is in lots of different places now, and not all databases are the same. There's a big difference between transactional databases, relational databases, non-relational databases. So being able to get that content into somewhere you can start working on is really important. And the performance of different databases, you need the right thing for the right job. We've got on there. You wouldn't use an espresso cup to serve a latte. It's about trying to get the right thing in. So just one for the bingo card.
Yeah, you don't get any gifts or prizes for the puns. They just flow in. Yeah, but it's great stuff. And I mean, that's where kind of Exasol comes in as well, isn't it? I mean, one of the reasons Dirk is here is to do with databases in general and the connectivity. Dirk, do you want to just briefly mention to us where does Exasol come in the general scheme of things for yellowfin people? If you're a yellowfin customer, why would Exasol be the perfect partner kind of thing?
Yeah,
sorry to put you on the spot a bit there, but
no, that's perfectly fine. Basically, I want to put it in a little bit wider perspective. First of all, when we're talking about where to place the data, it's not about a database or applications or different databases. First of all, it's the discussion: where do you want to place your data? Somewhere in a computing center on a hyperscaler, or you want to keep it on your own premises. Of course, sometimes for compliance, you have to be on your premises. The other thing is, I really hated to discuss, but it's an open reality, is the political landscape we are facing here right now, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping the data on your own under your own control, and we call it data sovereignty, might be pretty important, because you want to be really sure that you keep your data. And this is something we perfectly can achieve installing an Exasol analytical database on your own premises, even in large scale. And secondly, then where can Yellowfin benefit from? We are an analytical database, so we really do not do transactional load. If somebody wants to do a transactional use case, I'm turning around and wandering away, because this is not our turf. Our turf is to be the best in the market, the speediest, the fastest in the market, who can help you in answering your questions, or gets the answers you desire fast. And to give you an example, most of our queries coming back sub-second, and one of my biggest achievements was query 120 minutes runtime, scaling it down to less than 5 seconds. And this is where we are really coming in. Wow. And basically, and this is a different thing, the user itself does not notice a difference if the query is coming back or the dashboard is coming back in 0.4 or 0.6 or 0.8 seconds. He's saying, well, this is sub-seconds, this is fast enough. So there needs to be some other stuff around. Speed is one thing, but the flexibility of tools to achieve the use cases to solve your pain, like executing lots of tools inside the database where others have to struggle and do it in an external source. Yeah.
I mean, you brought up a very interesting point there, which is kind of relevant, I think, to what we're talking about, which is data sovereignty is actually becoming a really huge topic.
We've got a webinar on it next week.
Yeah, well,
we've got the guys from Exasol and Brewing are joining us to talk about a whole cloud stack or a stack to specifically enable that kind of stuff to work. So if you're not registered for that, that's definitely one to catch up on.
Yeah, in fact, someone should send me the link, and I'll put the link up as well. The European Parliament just basically kicked out Microsoft, and I'm not going to comment on politics, particularly as the UK has just had a little bit of a turmoil. I understand you're looking for a new Prime Minister yet again. The living joke at the moment is that isn't there a cat in Downing Street, and he's been there longer than 6 prime ministers or something? It's ridiculous. It's
and
quite
got more
sad.
followers on Instagram as well, I think. So
To be fair, he doesn't get voted in. He is actually just a despot who's decided to take up residence without the popular vote behind him. But yeah, I mean, joking apart, you know, you can pick on any country and say, oh, there's this thing wrong about politics. Some more than others, you know. Speaking as a British American, I actually have issues both sides of the coin when I talk to people. But joking apart, the European Parliament did actually effectively evict Microsoft. They've decided to use an open office type office suite for word processing and stuff like that, and stop using Microsoft Word. And the argument behind it is first of all that they wanted to ensure that it was the ownership of what they were using was in Europe, which I completely understand. But also they didn't really want to be at the kind of behest of a large organization like Microsoft that are able to move the dial, you know, physically by, you know, I mean, if Google drops some kind of service, it actually affects people's businesses worldwide. The same with Microsoft. If Microsoft Windows suddenly introduces a feature you don't like, you've got the choice of either not using Windows or being stuck with that feature. And it's something that the Europeans pushed back against. But it happens in the United States as well. Yellowfin is, although we are nominally an American company, as you can see today, despite the 3 British accents and a German accent, we're actually worldwide. The team, a lot of the development team, for example, based out in Australia, but there are Filipinos, there are people in France, there are people in Portugal, quite a few people in Portugal, I think, as well. So you know, there's a whole team behind us. So we are used to dealing with different territories and understanding it from the perspective of Europeans or Filipinos or you know, Eastern Europeans or Americans as well. And I think that's the key thing there is that you need to be dealing with someone who gets it on a kind of global scale, and I think that's what we're doing. So you've rather nicely sent me a link, which I will put up in a moment. But Exasol's sub-second queries, I mean, that's a pretty, you know, it's one of those throwaway statements that actually, until people have seen it in the flesh, they suddenly don't really think about it. It's like, oh, sub-second queries, yeah, great. But actually, that's not common. You know, for most databases, sub-second is an ideal, not an actual fact. And in the case of using Exasol, 0.5, 0.7 seconds, yes, I mean, a human being can't discern the difference. But when you multiply that up over all the things you're seeing on the screen or all the connections and, you know, repeated things like triggers and alerts and stuff like that, and it makes a difference. So
one of the things that's interesting there is, you know, the ideal in many respects is if you can put all of the elements of your BI stack in one place. So if you can have your database in the same place as your BI tools and so on, and close to your users as well, everything works, you know, optimally. You can't always do that. And one of the things that I really like about Exasol is that they've got, you know, a heavily optimized network protocol as well. So if you are stuck with your data residing on the wrong side of the planet, you're actually moving a lot less data between your BI tool and your database, and that can make a big difference when it comes to actually, you know, how laggy things feel. It's not just how long it takes to run the query; it's how long it takes to get the results back. And the bigger they are, the more difference it makes.
Yeah,
and I think to sum that up for Ian, just to deal with his cardboard cutout in the background, as Scotty would say, you cannot change the laws of physics.
Yeah, I kind of make it go faster, Captain. Exactly. Yeah.
But this is a pretty nice statement. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, carry on.
But this is a really nice acceptance statement for Exasol, because physics is also the same working for Exasol. I cannot cheat on physics, which translates to the fact that we understand physics at its best, being the fastest one. what you can see just straight again with the TPCH databases. And we started for the 1 terabyte and 3 terabyte, and the other one most likely will come as well. But if you see, for example, dollars per query, if you see something like this, we are fired of everybody else. So we understand best how to work with the physics. And this is a pretty important statement as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scientific approach as well to the way you're doing these things. It's not a kind of theoretical IT approach. I'm not saying that IT people are not scientific, but I think it, when you're talking about dealing with vast amounts of data, you need people that actually understand it on a very fundamental level and also understand what is and isn't possible. But also have the creativity to actually say, you know what, let's push the envelope a bit and see if we can make it faster. Before we started, you and I were having a conversation about AI. And you were discussing some drivers and things like that as well that you had. Hopefully this was not confidential, but I don't think it was. But you were saying that there was going to be some stuff on the Exasol site. Is that right? For some new drivers and things like that? Or did I mishear what you were saying?
Well, we are publishing momentarily so many things, One thing which I'm really proud of is, Exasol was a long time Intel or AMD architecture only, and right now as an experimental stage, but we are working on it to finalize it as a product, is Exasol on an ARM architecture, preparing it for the future. I cannot give you any roadmap, any timeline, but we are working on it to even work on the gravitons on a hyperscaler, which is a huge cost saving for both, for the hyperscalers and for the customers, because portions of the costs will be forwarded to the users as well. And also now there's no reason, no excuse anymore for all the Apple developers not to work locally and create applications against an Exasol database, because the so-called Exasol Nano is running perfectly on a Mac laptop. Yeah, I have running here on my one on ARM. It's really, really fast in a single node. And even if you want to do something, go to our Exasol Labs. Just search for Exasol Labs and then for Swift Connector. We have even a Swift Connector, a native connector for the database. And there's coming up some nice stuff in the future. I could talk about next week or so. I just got 2 days ago the get to go that we are putting this on Exasol as lab, but it's too early to talk about. But we're doing here also some stuff for the really cool architectures. Secondly, you were referring to AI. What happens right now with AI and Exasol is amazing. We started executing machine learning models, which still for some companies, some sort of AI. For us, it's just machine learning or some algorithms, like a random forest decision tree or so. We are executing up to a reasonable size large language models directly inside the database at the heart of your data without moving data out of the database. And this is really cool. And now we have even working with libraries and like Exasol, building up repositories and everything else, and doing agentic AI with skills and so on inside the database. Yeah, and we're at the beginning of what we can do with agentic AI, for example, in the database. But the most important point is leave the data where it belongs to in your database and do the data operations inside your database. This is really important.
Yeah. I think that's. I mean,
so a bit of a lag across the pond. I think one of the other things, just touching on the AI side of things, going back to where we were talking about, not all databases are the same. One of the things that we've certainly seen, with the first few versions of the AI capabilities within Yellowfin, is the type of questions that people are beginning to ask is expanding out. They're beginning to kind of, it's helping drive people to ask more engaged questions quicker, and going a lot further than the traditional guided NLQ would have done before. So which is great. It's doing what you should be doing, asking the data, finding the questions, and getting the answers, and moving on. The thing that comes with that is normal transactional databases are highly optimized and indexed around the work that you're doing on a day-to-day point of view in an application. When you're coming to doing the analytics side of things, and when you're asking data questions, you're not always going to have indexes against the things that you need to be able to make them perform and to do what you want it to do. And that's one of the things that we've really seen with Exasol, where we're having people ask questions, and because of the way it automatically indexes what it needs to index and sorts it all out for you, you get that speed, you get the answer back. I think as Dirk mentioned earlier, we've had customers who have gone from minutes to run a query down to a few seconds, and when you don't know that it's you're asking a question that on a transactional database is going to take half an hour to come back, you think the application's broken, and you then kind of start losing the train of where you are. So it's really important from a business point of view that when you've got those questions and you're in that flow, that you can ask them and you can get the answers back in a responsible way. And that's one of the big benefits of combining something like Exasol with Yellowfin.
Can I add to it, please? But also, there's an important point. The database is only as good as its data, which is residing on the database, or is the database design. And we talked this morning, and I want to just give you one example, and it's a real world example from a POC we did. So we received a database design, and they had currencies, 4-digit currencies like some euros and cents or whatsoever, or a 5-digit number. They were coding it with decimal 18 or 20.2, which is probably you can model all the currencies in the entire Milky Way for all the known and unknown planets. The point is, it makes a huge difference if you have to exchange data from the solid state disks to the main memory back and forth. If you're using, for example, a decimal 7.2 or an 18.2, comma 2, for 10, if you're talking about 5 gigabytes, or 1 million row, I don't care. But if I'm talking about billion of rows, and usually with Exasol, you're talking of billions of hundreds of billion of rows, this matters. Even if you have 10 parallel nodes working on it, it matters. Yeah. So you need to have a good understanding and so on. And this is also where we are going to help you with scripts, analyzing the data and giving you assumption, or even is changing the data types for you. And this is also contributing to the speed up. So just saying, hey, I'm having an Exasol and now I'm a sub-second response. This might work many times, but not always, because you have to understand what you're doing on the database. Yeah, so the human is still in the loop. And this is really important to understand.
Yeah, okay. So, Stephen, you said 10, is that right?
Yeah, perfect. This led into, we've got a few different sections and we don't always do things in order. So this is brilliant. It kind of segues into exactly, where your data lives matters. It's just mentioned about the difference in, disk IO can dramatically improve performance. We've already mentioned about, trying to have stuff when you can within the same data center. We've got Scotty about to be quoted again. Latency, we've certainly seen, where we've got different demo environments, and we've got some in Europe, some in APAC, some in the US. Having the data close to where you're working makes a big difference. It really is important.
Well, legally it can as well, actually.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's what we're going to talk about next week. But
yeah. So I think we're on this. So I thought, hey, let's jump into this and carry on with this part of the conversation whilst we're there. So, anything else from anybody else on this one?
Well, where your data lives.
Point, I think, as I mentioned earlier, it clearly does make a difference how far away your data is from where you're trying to get the answers. But the choice of database can make a difference as well. So how efficiently does the data get moved between where the query is being served and where the answer is needed? That can make a big difference. So I was looking at it. How you've configured the database in some cases makes a difference. So in the case of Postgres, old versions of Postgres, and we use Postgres a lot at Yellowfin. It's our kind of default choice for frame
A repository.
together, and lots of things. So we make sure it works on there because it's free and lots of people use it. But if you get the wrong configuration on the JDBC driver there, it can be very inefficient if your database is a long way away, because it makes lots of network round trips in order to pull all the data back. It says, oh, here's my query, let's prepare it. Oh, what's the data set look like? Okay, great. Are you ready to send me the data? Oh yeah, great. Send me some data then. Yeah, I got it. Thanks very much. And it's like, and in Exasol, it's like, give me the data. Okay, here you go. And it's just the number of calls required to get the data is radically different. And it doesn't matter if the application and the database are on the same PC. You're not going to notice that difference. But if they're on the other side of the planet, you do notice the difference.
It's like carrying a hot stone between your fingers, okay? And you pick that hot stone up, and you have to put it over on a table next to you, okay? And it's uncomfortable, because it's super hot, but you can just about bear it, and you put it on the table. Now repeat that 100 million times with the same temperature stone, and your fingers will burn away. And it's that same principle that actually the law of big numbers means that if you are saving fractions of a second, for one stone, nobody cares. But for 100 million stones, it saves your fingers. It's metaphor, but it's the same thing. Is being able to carry that stone a mile instead of to the table also would burn your fingers. So sometimes it's about how many times you carry the stone, and sometimes about the distance that you carry the stone. And it's the same thing with data. What that data is a hot stone. So you want to handle that as quickly as possible and take it the shortest distance you possibly can, so it doesn't burn your fingers. And I know it sounds like I'm some kind of, Al. But you get the gist of it. It's the same thing, it's the same principle, and sometimes that's the best way of explaining to people why there are two reasons why.
Yes, yeah. So we had a quick glitch there. Ian disappeared and reappeared for about a second, but all good. I think, Dirk, when we were chatting earlier, I think you mentioned something around data architecture and making sure that you kind of set your data up correctly to run analytics queries. Was there anything on that specifically that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, it's specifically for mostly all MPP databases, and to be honest, we are not the only one outside here now, but we're, as I mentioned, probably the best one. First of all, is because we have, in most cases, multiple nodes or many nodes and deployed for the use case or for the tasks, you need to think about how you want to distribute your data over the nodes. Yeah. We call it a distribution key. A wrong distribution key is really impacting your performance, for example. Secondly, then you have to talk about or think about partitioning. How do you want to partition data on one node? For example, when it's coming up to ordering, what do I bring on this node into main memory, except of keeping it in on disk, for example, to make the fastest queries possible. Usually we say, hey, whatever is being needed in a join is a good distribution key. Whatever is a filter column, like used in a having or in a workflows, this is good for a partition key, But the impact is, or the prerequisite is, you need to understand what your use case is. You need to understand what the possible SQL statements is you're going to send into the database. Otherwise, the design would not be optimal. And then we are coming up with also some stuff to ensure that the data is always local on join operations. Typically, you have some huge fact tables, for example, with billions of rows distributed. But some dimension tables, for example, take a dimension table with articles. Maybe you're talking about 50,000 articles, or you're talking about 6,000 rows of data. We copy this into the main memory to each node and keep it only on main memory. But we ensure that in most times we only have local joins and no global join, because a global join means I'm joining over the network. And this is a painful process. If you have everything on locally on the node, then we're talking about the guess what? Local join, and it's lightning fast. And then we only have to distribute the result set to the session node. So this node who is accepting the session. And also here, it's really important to understand that all nodes are equal. They can all accept sessions. You know, we have not a dedicated node with accepting a user session will be flooded by too many users. We distribute them over all the database nodes.
Yeah.
And these are some of the tools and of the methods or procedures we are doing to ensure that even on an MPP database with data distribution, everything is still fast.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of it's important to emphasize as well. That's your speciality. That's your kind of thing that you do.
Can you still hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you fine. Yeah. Yes, we can hear
Something
you. You
is weird
can't hear me, no?
Okay.
Rob, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, good. I'm not crazy.
Yes, that was the explanation what we are doing in terms of data distribution, and that you have to think about the data, how you want to deal with it, you know? And this means you have to understand your data. And this is again coming the brain into it. Yeah. If you place the data in a wrong fashion onto the database, then we cannot solve your pain by 100%. We might become faster, but we will not be optimal faster.
Yeah.
It's just that easy.
Understanding about carrying that stone and where it's got to go and how fast you want to go there, and you know, quick is good, but accurate is better. You know, and that's the other thing as well, is that you've got to make sure that whatever method you use.
The question is, Steve, you can hear me, but I can't hear the other ones. You know, here's some glitch in it.
Okay. I think if you can hear me, I think maybe should we move on to, or move back to kind of section 2 or 3? If you want to jump out and jump back in, Dirk, then we can do that, and that might reset your setting. So yeah, we'll see you in a second. Yeah, where have we got to? We are on caching. Yeah, so I think one of the things, you know, we've spoken quite a bit so far on you know, where your data is and the type of database it sits into, and some of the stuff that you can do around that. Obviously, if you've got a main application and you're pulling your data onto a separate database like Exasol or whatever you want to be using, you could be using Snowflake or whatever. What you're doing is basically building a warehouse or a data mart, which we've spoken about those in the past. You're caching some data in there. Now, I know, Rob, you are way more qualified than me to talk about kind of the caching side of things and how that manages and works through. So do you want to drive through this section?
Well, yeah, I mean, what the point that we're really trying to make here is that caching, the problem you're trying to solve with any kind of caching is when there's a significant distance between the place you want the answer and the place where the data starts. You can minimize those issues by making a copy of that data and storing it nearer to where you want the answers. Now, depending on what processing you need to do to transform the source data into the target data, that can influence where you're best off storing it. You know, if it's a straightforward, I just need to see it, that's one kind of cache, and that's probably the most traditional kind of cache. If we're honest, that's basically what, you know, where the idea of caching comes from. But you can also take more like snapshots is another way of looking at it. Essentially extract the data from wherever it is generated, move it to somewhere where, you know, closer to where you need answers, but also where you can do the processing. And in the BI world, you've got, generally speaking, two approaches to doing that. You know, at a high level, you can either have a dedicated data warehouse or database engine, and that's where Exasol comes into play. That's my personal preference, and the great thing about that is you can use it for, you know, whatever tools you need to throw at it, whether those are tools like Yellowfin or whether it's machine learning algorithms for doing sophisticated forecasting and that kind of thing. It's the same copy of the data. You can use it in one place. The other approach, which you know, some of our competitors advocate, is pull the data into your BI tool, and sometimes they get good results by doing that as well because they pull it into memory and it's very fast. But the question is, how much data can you actually load into main memory? Most BI tools are not designed really for managing. We had on the previous slide, eviction of the least recently used data. They expect to have all the data in memory. And that can be a bit of a challenge because it obviously limits the size of your working set for business intelligence. And that's one of the reasons why at Yellowfin we prefer the approach of leave the data in the database, let the database do the processing, and we'll just display the results. Is really what it comes down to in quite sophisticated ways, range of charting and so on. There's a little bit more to it than that because we help you to ask the question of the database as well. But the key thing is that we're using the database to answer those questions. And the more sophisticated that database platform is, the wider the range of questions that you can ask. So I think Dirk touched earlier on saying, well, Exasol can allow you to run all kinds of processing in database. You can run the machine learning algorithms without pulling the data out of the database, and that's by far the most efficient place to run it if you can, because you're not moving that data around, you're not paying the cost of extracting it and the time lag of moving it. If you can do it in the database, that's great. And Yellowfin can then consume that. I think we're probably planning to come back to that in a future session and sort of explore that concept in more detail. But doing work in the database is great. And there we're talking about it's a smart cache. Treat your database layer as a smart cache. It's not just something you've moved it and you can then get it quickly. You can actually do processing on it. So ask sophisticated questions without having to go back to the source or use a BI tool for that. I think it probably covered.
I think one of the
you want to add, Stephen?
Yeah, no. So I think one of the other things that we've mentioned about having the separate databases, obviously, it just avoids having that impact on your production server for your main applications as well, by running it off on a separate machine. But when you're doing that, you gain the benefits of being able to do those big, powerful queries without impacting the core business, which is what you're there to do. You want your business applications to be running 24/7, and make sure that you can still operate as a business. The reporting and the decisions you're making off of that are really important to the business, but not at the expense of the business happening. But with that, you then got that separation. So I think one of the things on the screen here is about your freshness of your data, and then making sure how that's sorted and how clean and up to date that is. And that can make a difference to the speed as well. Certainly if you've got data that you have an expensive overhead to go and fetch in the first place. I know there's some of our customers are using REST APIs to be able to connect up to enterprise applications to be able to extract the data they need to make their business decisions on. And that's fine if it's 1,000 records. When it's 100,000 records, that's a very different speed. Even at a simple pull, that's then taking seconds and upwards to just do that fetch. So having that data cached on a regular basis then allows you to be able to perform and do those operations, and that's all part of the right mix to make sure that you're then ready to go. And then once you've got it, just keeping an eye on it. So.
That's right. I think perhaps it's worth noting that when you're designing your overall BI application architecture, you're saying, like, where am I going to store copies of this data? How often am I going to retrieve a new copy of the data from the source system and load it into my cache, which could be a data warehouse? It's not free. When you do that data movement, you'll be incurring some kind of cost in terms of you have to have capacity on your transaction server to allow that to happen, bring it into your database. Again, you need capacity to deal with that. Depending on the database, you may need more resources to be able to accommodate both that load processing at the same time as query processing, or you may have to take it offline. I mean, that's relatively uncommon nowadays, but when I started my career, it was very much the case that you couldn't practically query the database while you were loading it. Nowadays, most databases, or many databases at least, can deal with that kind of thing. But in order to make that possible, you have to have a more powerful database, because it is consuming resources to allow you to be working from one copy while another one's being loaded and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it takes planning.
to augment this one, for example, and when I started the data warehousing back in the 90s, they were talking about loading Windows over the night, so the system was not available 24/7. today on the POC earlier this year, the customer said, yeah, well, loading performance is superb, but we have seen it that you load billions of records, yeah. But on the other side, how fast can you really load? Because we are changing and adding the data several times a day. So we are coming around the corner with 400 million rows in 392 seconds, which translates about 1 million rows in a second. And that's the point. And it was only a 6-node system with a hardware, which is a former customer hardware, an appliance we are now using ourselves, where the hardware is 6 to 7 years old. Yeah, and this is the point. How fast can you quickly get the data into it during the day? For example, you want to start in a retail business. This is quite often you want to start a promotion sub-day. You need to have the data for analysis before deciding what you want to promote. Let me say over lunchtime and so on. Because this is a slow seller. Yeah, and you can only do this if the data is flowing in. Loading data or pushing data in is not fast enough anymore. Yeah, and this is the point.
And actually, you bring up a good point there, because if we think about the retail sector, for example, they often do dynamic promotions. So they will promote something until they've achieved the objective of getting rid of the stock that they have, or they've bought some en masse, a great big bunch of it, a whole field of tomatoes or something crazy like that. And in retail, what they want to do is get rid of that stock. If it's perishable in particular, they want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. So they will dynamically promote that on the website, on the apps. Some of the shelf edge stickers as well are dynamic. Certainly, where my ex-wife works, they have dynamic pricing stickers for their furniture store, but they have dynamic pricing. You can't do that if the data coming in cannot be processed quickly enough in order for you to provide a dynamic result. So, when you're talking about 10,000 stores coming in with the data of what's being sold, if they're pre-ordering it or ordering it, it's a big problem, And I think it goes back to what you're saying, is being able to load it in and process it at the same time and have those live queries it's a real challenge. And so it's not something you're going to do by tweaking your MySQL query. It's not going to happen.
You make a really interesting point there, Ian, where you're talking about retail. And I suspect this is maybe a difference between the US and Europe, where certainly in my experience in Europe, yes, there were technical limitations. And I do remember at the start of my career, we were struggling because the time taken to load a day's worth of data was more than 24 hours. Obviously, that's a bit of a challenge. But towards the end of my time in retail, we had a different problem, which was, yes, we would have liked to be able to run within-day promotions in some cases, but the challenge was the legislation. You had to be able to guarantee that the shelf edge was actually the same one that was done at the till, and actually coordinating all of that was not practical. So in the end, we just didn't do it, because ensuring you really get there was so. And the point there is not so much, oh, what a pity you couldn't do it. It was that, well, actually, because you couldn't do that, that meant there wasn't a heck of a lot of point in getting the data back in real time into your data warehouse, because there really wasn't much you could do with it. And you were paying a lot of money to be able to stream it in real time. So you just think through carefully, it's like, is it worth paying that extra money in order to be able to stream in real time? Make sure that you've actually got a use case that will use it in real time. Otherwise, you probably save yourself a lot of money by going for, let's load it every hour or every 10 minutes.
There are regulations here as well about sales, where you cannot have something on sale where it hasn't been on sale at a higher price. It's even in the United States, where we're a little bit more lax about these things than Europe. It is actually a regulation here. However, what usually happens is someone, I'm not going to call out a company, but let's say a soft drink company or a soda company, depending on which country you're in, they will sell it more expensive for just the required amount of time that they can then say, hey, it's 50% off. And it's the traditional thing. But again, it's down to being able to have intelligent access to your data and being able to manage it in a way where you know what the demand is. It's no good having a sale on something that, first of all, by selling it, it costs you money if it's a loss leader, for example. So you want to make sure that you're not lost leading to the point where you're bankrupting yourself. But secondly, there's a benefit to that lost leading. So we all know that bread and milk, for example, is traditionally in the retail sector is usually priced at cost or less than cost. I think in the United States there are some regulations about pricing it less than cost. So if it costs you 50 cents to get a pint of milk, you can't sell it for 49, for example. There are some regulations about that, but even so, lost leaders, it's a data caching problem, it's a data manipulation problem, and that's just in retail. When you start to get to things like furniture, where there are long lead times because they're made in, say, Indonesia or somewhere like that, they're physically coming over on a ship, then they arrive. You then have to assess the damage because some of them get damaged in transit. You've got people that have pre-ordered those bits of furniture, so you tend to do a just-in-time kind of thing where, you say to the customer it'll be available in 6 weeks, as long as the ships don't get
Blockaded
disappeared off the ocean,
Well,
or something like that. Yeah, it's an issue.
I think the point that Rob made there about do you have the right use case to be able to run it is actually on the next slide. I know we're kind of running a little bit short on time for finishing through, but we did have a section here about smarter dashboards, fewer queries, and the fastest query is the one you never have to run. So if the business case really doesn't stack up for running a query, then try to avoid running it and leaving the resources free to kind of run what is actually going to move the needle for the business. I know we've got certain features within Yellowfin that help kind of reduce down the amount of queries that you need to run. Where you can run the query against the database, bring it back in, and then sort out multiple different types of visualizations based on the returned data set by putting it onto the dashboard once and then cloning the cursor to it. And you can actually build multiple report visualizations off the same returned data set to enable people to view it and consume it and understand it in different ways. Because going back to one of our previous sessions, different types of reports help you visualize and see data in different ways and get to the answer and see the answer in a quicker way, depending on what your use case is. And sometimes you need to view something from a few different sides. If you're going to go and buy a car, you'd look all the way around it to kind of get the view of the front, the back, and the sides and the insides to actually make the decision if you want to buy it or not. If you only ever look at the bonnet, then are you getting the whole picture? And I think that's certainly that's a good way.
For you there, America.
Yeah. Well, I was going to pick you up on your pronunciation of tomato earlier, but I had all of it at the time. So
when I became an expat Brit, I adopted American spelling, and I don't actually say any American pronunciation apart from tomato. I still say aluminium. Aluminium is my brain is wired to say aluminium. I cannot say aluminum. I have so many anecdotes about biscuits and chips, which I've learned to call them chips. Otherwise, I don't get given them. But crisp chips, But Dirk, you were going to make a point. I think we cut you off a little bit. What you were going to make?
No, that's totally fine. But I have to second what Steve was saying. Yeah, the fastest query is the one you don't have to take, and that's why we're also caching. And usually, and I give you an example with some of the frameworks. Yeah, they are not working out of a dozen or hundreds of tables. They have just 2 or 3 consumption views, and we're caching those views. And then we only have to see, is the data still valid or is the data not valid? So basically, you think you're running a query, but the database does not, because they say, hey, I can answer it already straight away. Yeah? And this is, again, what you mentioned before. We concentrate what we can do best. We are doing the presentation layer, the user interactivity, and we are keeping the real stuff. Of course, what you're doing is real stuff as well. Don't misunderstand me here. But data handling sides, we are keeping the real stuff inside the database. And this is exactly the right separation of responsibility. Yeah, and that's the point. Because sometimes you have a dashboard of consisting of 50 or 60 queries. Yeah, it's not just the 10 visualizations you have, then you have to fill up the filters and everything else, but you want to filter one chart or many and so on and so forth. And this is summing up for the database load. And then we are coming
we've seen that with we've seen that with Yellowfin customers as well. They build some really complex, detailed dashboards, but they then set it as their default screen at the point they log in. And you've even got like 60, 70 queries that are being fired off every time you log in. And half the time they're logging in, they're actually going somewhere else to do something else. So sometimes you need to be smart in terms of setting up where your entry point is. Do you want that to always be your load screen, or do you want to actually have a screen in there that you can do a single click and take you directly to that dashboard and use it as a way to kind of reduce down the entry load time as well? That is
that's the point. The most complex dashboards, is my experience, only a fraction of the information is required at once. So keep it more simple, and that link or refer to the other ones. You can have the huge dashboards in something what we call a nerve center or a war room, or however you want to consider it, on huge screens which hang on the wall, and you're looking up to it and getting your information you require, and then you have everything. But for the operative ones, you're working personally on it. I see many times dashboards way too big designed, way too much information. You're flooded with information you don't need.
There's a very good adage, actually, which is if you want good answers, ask good questions. And every query is a question. So if you want a good answer from that query, you need to ask the question to formulate the query in a good way. But actually, it's to extend that metaphor a little bit further, if you know you're going into something like a dashboard or something like that, when you're designing the flow of the screens or whatever, if you know what the questions are that people are going to ask, what answers they actually want, that's an example of where you say, well, I'm going to preempt some of these questions. I'm going to preempt some of these queries ahead of time so that you can give the answers more accurately and more quickly. And so it's not just about the speed that you can actually physically process those queries, but to anticipate what the questions are going to be in order to have the answers ready in time. So, there's a lot of different techniques there. And I think smarter dashboards is actually quite a big topic. It's probably one we could cover in depth.
Yeah.
But,
and I think that thing of having the executive summary versus all the drill through data, being able to smartly say, well, here's something, here's the high level number, or here's the high level picture. Go, oh, I want to have a look into that, click into it and be able to see it. And I think that's where things like spark lines and other kind of stuff are really, really useful, because you can show that summary very, very quickly, without having to kind of have all that detail, that data to having it all on the screen as well at the same time.
And this is exactly the point. Most people measure performance and response time. I would measure speed and response time plus think time of the user. Too many information, too high the think time.
Yeah. We actually talked about this last week as well. Yeah.
And if you're coming up with a simple one, think time is quick, is fast, and then you click, okay, this is a bad number, click on it, getting the further information. The typical trial path. By implementation, this is probably a little bit more work to implement, because then you have to define your drill downs and whatsoever. But from the user acceptance and for the overall performance, way better.
Yeah, great stuff. Okay, well, we're at the top of the hour, and weirdly enough, we're probably going to finish on time, unless you want to keep going, Stephen. But it's up to you.
I think the only probably final comment, I know Rob had some really interesting commentary around testing earlier with production size content. So I don't know if there's like a quick executive summary that you wanted to add on that side of things, Rob. No, it's right. It's on there anyway.
Okay.
It's just an observation, really, that yes, the performance you can expect from production. If you want to know how your dashboards are going to perform in a production environment, you absolutely need to test with production volumes before you go live. Otherwise, you're almost guaranteed to get a nasty surprise. And that's
exactly.
So make sure you do.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah. And I think as well, those people that are Yellowfin customers who are watching this, Dirk, am I right in saying that Exasol, there's no one set place where Exasol, one set, what's the word I'm looking for, implementation timeline where you can get involved? If they already have Yellowfin, it's possible for Exasol to come along and help. Is that right? An existing
absolutely.
customer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And it's a symbiotic relationship, for us, because the reason we like having you on is, first of all, you're a good guy, you're a good guest, you're very erudite in the way you say things, and I don't know if you say tomato or tomato, but I think we're fine. But I think that the other benefit as well is that Yellowfin and Exasol, the reason that we have you on is because it is that kind of relationship where we're doing one side of things and you're doing the other side of things, but actually the two halves make actually more than a whole. It's not often you get 50% and 50% added together and you get 150%, and that's what you get.
And we have two very good partners where we're working very closely together over Edge, with South Africa and the Netherlands, and it's not just that we're partnering together with them; they have success like hell, and that's the point.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning when we were talking about sovereignty. Yellowfin is a worldwide company, and actually, we're based. There's some over here, some over here, some over here, and we get it. If you're in Europe, don't be put off by British or American accents, because there's probably someone local to you who's going to speak your language or at least pronounce English in the way that you pronounce it. So that's a good start. So it's.
But I think
isn't it? I think that's where we're going.
But I think it's just finalising off. Then the one thing that is really true about both the products is that you install them where you want them. This isn't something that you kind of go to a company and go, well, you've got to go on the cloud where we want to put you. No, if you want to run this on-prem, you run it on-prem. Where you're kind of working with big corporations who have very strict rules and regulations around where their data is going to go. Who want to run it on-prem or who want to run it in the cloud, or I disappeared off the screen.
Hang on. I know what's happened. There you go.
There we are. It's that flexibility, and we both work a lot with large enterprise organizations, but also a lot with ISVs, because and we've spoken about ISVs in the past. The business model of learning from your customers, productizing the best stuff and selling it back to them, and being able to give it to them where they want it. And that's something that works really, really well. And there's an AIGS, who are one of our partners in South Africa, who are also an Exasol partner. They sell predominantly to ISVs, and it's having that combination of the bundle to go in that means they can literally just drag, drop, and in you go. And no matter what's being thrown at it, it's going to just work. And ultimately, that's what you want. So, yeah.
Yeah, and down at the bottom of the screen, I've put our sandbox link as well. If you want to try Yellowfin and see what it does, there you go. You see, he's
I'm learning.
Almost like he's done it before. Stephen got to point to it correctly. Yeah, good job. Rob, we'll just have to point at each other and then down. So that's
such a lag on the screen that I'm not sure.
Yeah. There you go. So it's like the Brady Bunch or something like that, isn't it? Or celebrity. Wasn't it celebrities? What was that thing where they had people in squares? I think it's called Celebrity Squares or something. I'm probably less than 1970s.
That's about maybe 20 years old, isn't it? That one?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. But anyway, I'm getting away from the fact that, first of all, if you want to try out Yellowfin, go to sandbox.yellowfinbi.com and you can try it. We do have a webinar next week. It's not me. I don't think I'm hosting it. I think you guys are doing it.
No.
Right, yeah. And that is this one, the QR code there. If you're watching this after, I think yours is on Wednesday, isn't it? Or Tuesday?
It's on the 1st, I believe, yeah.
Oh, so I think it's Thursday. So if you're watching it after the 1st of July, too late, you missed it, watch the replay. But if not, you can scan there. And whilst we're doing that, I will also put up the link for Exasol, because Dirk has been very generous with his time today and come along. I can put him down here as well. Go to exasol.com I showed it whilst Dirk was talking as well. I scrolled through the website. Some very, very interesting stuff on there. What was that exploratory thing that you said, Dirk? It was like for developers. I forget what you called it now. I've got the
Exasol
website.
Labs. Isn't it?
Exasol Labs.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, in fact, I've got the website up there. Yeah,
and then
Labs.
especially have a look for Exasol Nano, because this is a perfect small-scale database you can run on Docker desktop on either if it's Windows, Linux, or if it's ARM technology.
Yeah.
I just can say wonderful work our engineers.
It's a shame. It's a shame Montana couldn't join us today. Fortunately, a little bit under the weather, so I get well soon in Montana. But really cool things that is going on at the moment is their partnership with MariaDB, which is the most popular distributed database on Linux platforms. And under their MariaDB Enterprise Edition, they've got a partnership with Exasol, which is actually really cool, where you connect into MariaDB, and then it will look at the query and go, oh, this is an analytics query, and it will just direct it underneath the hood into its Exasol copy, which is kept up to date. It's like 1 second out of sync or something. I think Monty was talking about when I met him. So yeah, there's some really, really cool stuff. And obviously they've checked the whole market about what's out there and come back and said, this is the stuff that you want to be using. So that's a pretty high recommendation to come back. So pretty cool stuff too.
Montana is also the only person I know that built their own Linux distribution from scratch because he wasn't satisfied with everybody else's version. He just decided to build his own. Okay. I love him for it. I think he's a very funny guy. He's a very interesting guy. Fairly new to the company as well. I think he's a.
So will he become the next Elon Musk or what? Because
I hope not.
If I'm not sure, please correct me. But if I remember correctly, Ubuntu at the early days was a distribution created by Elon, all right?
No, I don't think so. It was by, I should know this because I went to, it begins with a C. I can't remember what they're called, but yeah, it was, as far as I'm aware.
Maybe I'm mixing up some stuff.
Me, though. He's done a lot of weird stuff. He's a deeply strange guy, but he is also extremely productive. I remember seeing him on Saturday Night Live, Elon Musk, and he came out and he says, I helped make the world's first electronic sports car possible. He did admit that he didn't invent it, by the way. He bought a company and then pushed them to and he said, I was one of the co-inventors of PayPal. I have the first reusable rockets that go out to space and land back down again. He said, and I'm going to put people on Mars. Did you really think I was going to be some kind of chill guy? And I thought that was a very interesting thing to say, because he knows he's weird and he knows he's like intense and everything, and he doesn't care. And he's the world's richest man, or slightly less rich as of the other day, but
no, but yeah, I mix up some stuff.
Atom, okay, yeah.
No, it was Mark Shuttleworth, also.
That's it, Mark Shuttleworth, yeah.
Sorry,
Montana, don't ever ask Montana about this. Otherwise, we'll be here for 12 hours while she tells us all the things. Yeah, you can't use Ubuntu for the following reasons.
I'm just going to turn my Teams off so he doesn't start messaging me now.
Excellent. Well, look, thanks a lot, guys.
It's been a lot of
fun. Robert and Stephen, thank you as always. Dirk, thanks for joining us. I know your iPad has been a challenge.
Yes, the point is, sorry, first of all, thanks for having me. And secondly, this was just a proof that the Earth is rotating, because the chip always in the iPad there's a rotation, and I have to correct it. I don't know why.
We should have
don't rotate.
We should have had a background that made you look like you were flying and doing this. It would have been so awesome. Maybe some flying goggles on you as well. It would have been great.
Apologies for this annoyance, but I think it's still.
Don't worry about it. Your sound has been great. Your sound has been great. So we've heard we've heard this what you've said, which is more as important as anything else. But we'll get that worked out next time, so you're on, because I'm sure this won't be the last time we have you. But yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. Thank you. And for those of you that are watching, we're here every week, same time. If you're watching this on the replay, great. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you could subscribe and give us a like, none of us here will get anything for it. We don't get a beautiful plaque from YouTube because we don't monetize the channel. I think that, I just hit the wrong button here. Hang on. Stop. I accidentally hit my keyboard and played a video there. But anyway, click on subscribe. What it does is it means that people that are like you, according to the algorithm, will get the channel suggested. It's very helpful to us. You know, you won't get any emails as a result of that. You won't get spammed. All that will happen is when we go live next time, or we do a special event like we go to Exasol's event or something like that and broadcast live, you'll get a notification from YouTube. And that will be helpful. But it also means that anybody that appears like you from the data will also get us suggested with, as a recommended channel or video, and that would be very helpful to us. We just want to get the word out. We're not going to make you buy it, but hopefully if you go to the Sandbox, maybe you'll love what you see and go from there. But in the meantime, thank you very much. Bye-bye, guys. Guests, Robert, Stephen, and Dirk. And we will see you next time.